Let's bring in former prosecutor Steve Baric, who has seen all of these things play out before. Steve, one of the criticisms we've heard time and time again, and you've heard it too, is that this case, were he not Hunter Biden, never would have gone forward. However, we have also heard the special prosecutor David Weiss talk about the seriousness of the charges in this crime, in this case, and why the verdict was essential and how no one is above the law. Where do you fall in this, and how do you see things shaking out?
That's a great question, Nick. I mean, I think it's interesting. In the federal court, I prosecuted in both federal and state courts. The federal court is usually a little stricter as it relates to, if there's a violation of the law, they pursue it, especially in this kind of environment where you're dealing with gun charges. Usually federal courts, the federal prosecutors take a very aggressive view on gun charges in general. I think, Nick, we're in a very unique period of time in the criminal justice system in that it's encroaching upon our political world as well. And so these are very uncharted waters, Nick, regarding, what is the impact of having such famous people being prosecuted. We dealt with it a couple of weeks ago. Now we're dealing with it with Hunter Biden. So it all poses interesting challenges for the federal courts and the federal prosecutors, for sure.
And in no way should it be the norm. But Steve, it seems as though this is the hand we have been dealt. How important was it for you as a former prosecutor to actually hear the special counsel say that he appreciated the full support from the Attorney General and that he thanked his jury and his team?
Well, I think I'll go and we'll start with the second half of that first. I think thanking the jury, thanking his team for pursuing this, I think it was totally appropriate. Thanking the Attorney General, I think he then stepped into the political crossfire. I mean, that's clearly to deal with political messages that have been directed from the Senate subcommittee at the Attorney General, who questioned the Attorney General over the last couple of weeks. So I don't know how helpful that was. That seemed to be stepping over into the political world, but certainly his latter comments regarding thanking his team and the jury were absolutely appropriate coming from a prosecutor, that's for sure.
One of the things we've questioned, again, also is even though Hunter Biden has been found guilty on all three of these federal charges, how much does it weigh in that he's a first-time offender and that he's shown acts of what some would say are contrition?
Oh, I think, Nick, whether it be him or whether it be former President Trump, I think that my experience in the criminal courts throughout this country is being a first-time offender is hugely relevant. We believe as a country in giving people second chances. And I think that that's definitely going to be a very relevant inquiry. Like, I don't believe the Hunter Biden to be sentenced to prison time at all. I would be very surprised by that. Mainly because he's a first-time offender. I think that plays a huge role, Nick. You bring up a very good point.
One of the things we spoke about earlier, too, was the fact that it would behoove Mr. Biden, the younger Mr. Biden, to lay low, to not necessarily react negatively to his conviction, even though I can only assume that someone being convicted of a felony might be angry, may want to lash out, particularly with the heat of the bright white spotlight directly on him. What would you say in this situation, Steve, and when you yourself have had to deal with clients in this particular situation?
Well, I think his lawyers are probably advising him, Nick, to, show contrition, probably to keep it low. Remember, he's going to have to go in front of this same judge for sentencing in about a couple of months. And I think at that point, you really want to, show remorse. The jury has rendered its verdict. And I think, especially for Hunter, for Mr. Biden, I think the advice that he's getting to keep low, not say a lot, probably makes a lot of sense. And that's what I would generally advise clients to do in the same or similar circumstances.
Steve, last parting thought. I've got less than 30 seconds here. I do want to ask you, though, about the fact that Hunter, now we know that he will be, like you said, possibly laying low. The sentencing that comes in the next 100 odd some days, you expect the judge to actually do what in this particular situation?
Oh, I think that if I were to anticipate what's going on. So, Nick, I think it's important to point out the federal sentencing guidelines are very structured. They limit in a lot of ways what a federal judge can sentence in a particular case. The attorneys on both sides will write briefs which will outline mitigating and aggravating factors based on the sentencing guidelines. I think that this judge probably would set something up within the context of probation, sort of rehabilitation. That's what I would expect in a case like this. You know, it's so funny. You just sometimes fact is stranger than fiction. It's very interesting that on the day his son is convicted of a gun charge, the president is talking about it at a gun control seminar get together in the next couple of hours. We're just entering such interesting times. But Nick, that's what I would expect. I would expect probation in this case for Hunter Biden, mainly due to the fact that he's had no prior convictions.
Steve Baric, trust me, the irony was not lost on us either. Steve Baric, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.